Hello YouTube fam, my name is Gina Marie and thank you for joining me today. This is where I like to talk about both solved and unsolved true crime cases, related statistics, and missing person cases that I don't feel have gotten enough attention from mainstream media. If you are interested in these topics like I am, please subscribe to my channel, and if you hit that little bell, YouTube will notify you whenever I upload new content. Today I will be talking a little bit about Samuel Little, but more so about his unidentified victims. He was born Samuel McDowell on June 7, 1940, making him a Gemini. His mother was a 16-year-old named Bessie Mae Little, and his father was a 19-year-old named Paul McDowell. At some point, Samuel McDowell had his last name changed to Little. I'm not sure at what point, but he did continue to use the McDowell name as an alias throughout his lifetime. If you research enough, you will see some sources that say that Bessie Mae was a sex worker who was incarcerated when she gave birth to Samuel, and that later she abandoned him on the side of the road while he was still an infant. But I could not find any factual, reliable sources that showed that there was any proof whatsoever that any of that was the case. I did, however, find a census report that showed that when she was 16, Bessie Mae was listed as working as a maid. I also found interviews with Samuel Little where he would belittle his mother, and he seemed to try and get attention from the interviewer and sympathy for making it sound like his childhood was worse than I even think it was. He later went to stay with his mother in Florida for a while, and according to Mr. Little, that's when he first started attacking women. But again, I'm not quite sure of the timeline because his sense of time, you'll see later, is not as good as it could be. That's for sure. And there's really no proof of any of it. Anyways, attacking sex workers had a lot less to do with hating his mom and a lot more to do with trying not to get caught. And it worked for him for about 35 years. Little told the TV show 60 Minutes during an interview that he developed a fetish for women's necks after first becoming sexually aroused by his kindergarten teacher when she would touch her neck. I wasn't even aware that 5 or 6-year-olds could get sexually aroused, but that's his story and he was sticking to it. Anyway, he was arrested at age 15 for theft of a bicycle, and from there he continued his life of crime. He was raised by his grandmother on his father's side. I know that, but I don't know from what point or how that happened. He obtained multiple cars over the years, though how is unclear as well. These vehicles would oftentimes become murder scenes. He was a rare type of serial killer. He was a nomad, traveling all over the continental United States while getting high, stealing, raping, murdering, beating women all along the way. Over the years, he was arrested numerous times. Here is a timeline photo of mugshots that was compiled by the FBI to show what Little looked like over the years as he got arrested. Samuel Little would sometimes claim that he killed because he was told to by God. Other times he claimed it was the devil that told him to kill. And even other times he stated that he killed to put his victims out of their misery because they were all sex workers, drug addicts, and vagrants, or all of the above, and that the lives that they lived were nightmarish. But I would venture to say that their lives were much less of a nightmare than the moment that their lives were being taken by Mr. Little. So I don't believe his excuses at all. He was a sick, twisted piece of shit who would literally get off by strangling his victims. He would victimize people that he thought no one would even miss. He would attack women who he thought no one would notice were gone, people he thought the police were not going to be real eager to search for. He would pretend to befriend them and sometimes giving them things like a place to sleep or a ride, a hot meal, even just getting high with them. He would pretend that he was just cool with them and stuff. And sometimes he would know his victims for just a few days, other times just for mere minutes. And when he felt the moment was right, he would attack his unsuspecting victims by punching them to either knock them out or disorient them so that he could start strangling and choking them. And he would jack off while he was strangling them. Sometimes he would only choke them long enough for them to lose consciousness, and then he would let them be revived just so that he could start choking them again so that he could continue the assault while he's jacking off until he was able to get off. And then he would ultimately end their lives. And I don't believe for a damn second that he did this to help them in any way, only to help himself indulge in his twisted, disgusting fantasies. The LAPD at one point had dubbed him the choke and stroke killer. He would later be called the most prolific serial killer in the United States by the FBI, which is a title that he holds to this day. In 2014, Little was arrested in a homeless shelter, and then he was extradited back to Los Angeles, where there was a warrant for his arrest for some drug charges. And while he was in custody there, they took a sample of his DNA, which a lot of places, a lot of jails will do that if you are being held for felony charges. Anyways, they took his DNA, they ran it, and it turned out to match 3 cold cases of homicide in the Los Angeles area. He was then arrested in 2012 and charged with these 3 homicides. Although he insisted he was innocent, obviously the DNA taken from the crime scenes matched his DNA, and that proved that he was the murderer. And in 2014, he was convicted of the 3 homicides and sentenced to 3 life terms without the possibility of parole. A few years later, a Texas Ranger named James Holland read about Samuel Little and the 3 homicides that he was convicted of, and he felt like those homicides bore resemblance and similarities to a cold case that he had in Texas. So he wanted to talk to Samuel Little regarding that cold case of his that he had worked. So he went out to Los Angeles and visited with Mr. Little, and he built a rapport and tried to seem like he was a friend, gave him the option to talk about stuff, and Little was enjoying the attention, and finally he agreed to not only confess to the murder that the Texas Ranger was asking about, but also many, many more. He ultimately confessed to a total of 93 murders across 19 states that took place during the years between 1970 and 2005. The facts of his confessions have closed cases that were thought impossible to solve, as well as cases that weren't even thought to be murder cases at all. The lack of DNA evidence and analysis made it really hard to connect Little to his victims in the past. Also, Little killed in a way that didn't look like the deaths were homicides to investigators at the time. They were classified as either drug overdoses, accidents, or deaths from natural causes. Again, since the bodies were of drug addicts and sex workers, the police did not dig any deeper when the remains are out in the elements decomposing, and there are no obvious signs of homicide like blunt force trauma, knife wounds, gunshot wounds to the skeletal remains. The cops are sometimes unlikely to investigate further, especially if it's due to what they consider to being the deceased being high-risk members of society. And I seem to revisit this subject in almost every one of my videos, and it really starting to piss me off. It is not their job to judge what someone's what their morality or their life decisions. They're not there to judge these things. Every case, no matter color of skin, neighborhood that it happened in, financial class, whether they're a lawyer or a junkie, it doesn't matter. Every damn case deserves the same time, media attention, investigation. The families deserve it. The victims deserve it. It boils down to this. The police need to do their damn jobs. Period. Or they should be fired, and the city needs to bring in people who give a shit and will do their damn job. Okay, rant over. I'm sorry. Anyways, Little became interested in art while he was locked up. He enjoyed drawing, and he felt he was getting pretty good at it. He also had a great memory of some details surrounding each of his murders, as far as who the victims were, what they looked like, the circumstances around their murder. And sometimes his exact dates were way off, though. But he was asked to provide as much information as he could remember for each of his victims, as well as to sketch the faces of the ones that he thought he could draw. He gave interviews with that Texas Ranger Holland for over 650 hours during a 16-month period. It has been said that the drawings were really good, and to me, it looked like a fifth grader drew it, and why they did not sit him down with a forensic sketch artist baffles me to no end. In some instances, though, these details and drawings are all that are had now of the victims. At this point, Mr. Little has died. He died in December of 2020 in prison of old age. Wasn't it nice that he got to die of old age, but I'll just move on past that. Anyways, he is no further assistance in identifying these women. The FBI is still asking for the public's help, in identifying the rest of his victims. They want to give them their names back based on the details that Little gave them and these awful sketches that he drew up. Some of the ones on the FBI official government website. Some of them are on there. Some of them are not. I'm not sure how they discern which ones they should post and which ones they shouldn't. But 5 of the unidentified cases that are shared in great detail. The rest, for some reason, are merely given a sentence or two. They share 5 videos of him actually confessing for the 5 victims that they have the most details on the website for. I don't know why they didn't share all of the video confessions of all the unidentified victims. That would make it a lot easier to identify, but I'm sure they have their reasons. Let's see. They do need their identities back. Identifying his victims, though, from his confession details is not going to be an easy task by any means. The purpose of this video was not to tell Mr. Little's story, because I could care less about this piece of shit, or his so-called struggles in life. I unfortunately had to tell his story, and I had to do it in order to be able to make sense of the victims' stories. I'm making this video in the hopes of helping to bring some closure to the families of his victims who thought that their loved ones just overdosed or just vanished and never knew what happened to them. They may have been told that their loved ones died from a drug overdose or an accident or natural causes. Or maybe they were told that their loved one was murdered, but they don't know by who. There are Jane Does out there. They know were murdered, and they know they're Jane Does. They know who did it, but they don't know who the Jane Doe is, and we need to get them their names back so their families can bury them or have some kind of closure. They need their identities back. And so I am going to go ahead and give what little details the FBI site has on each of the victims. And if you have any information at all about the identity of these women, I will have the contact information posted in the description section of this video. For the FBI, you can remain anonymous if you need to remain anonymous. That is okay. If you know something, though, it is your duty as a decent human being to say something. So please do. And here are some details and sketches taken from his confessions that have not yet been matched to cold cases. The first 5 have very detailed accounts for their cases, and then there is going to be a long list with very few details. Some have pictures, some don't. I know it can seem boring, but this is very, very important, so I hope that you will stick it out and stay until the end of this video. Listen to the details, because you may be the one who has the key to giving these women their identities back and giving the much-needed closure to their families. Okay? I know it's going to be a little bit drawn out, but we're going to give this a try. Try to make this as painless as possible. This first one is a case that has been unmatched to his confession. It's out of New Orleans, Louisiana. Little stated that in approximately 1982, possibly during autumn months, he met a black female in New Orleans. He described her as being between 30 and 40 years old, 5'8" or 9". She was about 160 pounds and had honey-colored brown skin. She was had medium to short, straightened hair. He remembered that she was wearing what he described as a pretty dress with buttons on the front. That doesn't really help much, but maybe. He said that they met at a club where she was attending a friend's birthday party. She was there with a group of her friends, as well as one of her sisters was there. He managed to talk her into leaving with him, and she got in his car. His car was a Lincoln Continental Mark III. The woman told Little that she lived with her elderly mother, who was sickly and possibly an invalid. She also gave Little the keys to her house, or so he says. I'm going to guess she didn't do that voluntarily, but I wasn't there. He drove her to onto the I-10, and he got off the Little Woods exit off the I-10, where he turned down a dirt road that ran along a canal that was being dredged at the time. And they got out of the car, and Little drug her toward the canal, where he then killed her and left her body. He then got back into his car, and he drove back to the motel he was staying at in Pascagoula, Mississippi. He just left her there. The next case is unmatched to confession, 1993, Las Vegas, Nevada. In 1993, Little was driving a yellow Cadillac Eldorado. He drove it to Los Angeles. I'm not sure from where. He met a black woman on Owens Avenue or Jackson Street in Las Vegas, Nevada. He described her as a thin, dark-skinned woman who is about 40 years old. He said she was about 5'5" and between 110 and 120 pounds. He believed that she had naturally short hair, but that she was wearing a long-haired wig, and so that's how he drew her, was in the wig. He remembered that she pointed her son out when they were driving and he was walking, and she pointed him out to Little, and he said that her son was a black male, probably ages 19 to 23 years old. He was also slender. He then took this lady to a motel where he raped her and he strangled her to death. He then said he put her body in the trunk of his car and then drove her to the outskirts of Las Vegas. He pulled off onto a remote road and he rolled her body down a steep slope. And then he got back in the car and drove a little further down the road and threw her clothes out of the car. It's likely that her remains have never been found to this day. I hope that the officers take his directions, and if I was closer, I'd even go and just see if they can recover her. The next case is also unmatched to his confession. It's in Covington, Kentucky in 1984. Little stated that approximately 1984, possibly during the summertime, he was driving his Lincoln Continental Mark III from Lorain, Ohio to Cincinnati, Ohio. While en route, he met a 25-year-old white female outside of a strip club. He remembered her as being 5'6" or 5'7", between 140 and 170 pounds, with short blonde hair, blue eyes, and quote-unquote a hippie appearance. He said that she approached him. She asked for a ride to Miami, Florida, where her mother supposedly lived. Little stated that he agreed. She got into his car. And he then drove south on I-75. When they reached Cincinnati, the two of them spent time downtown on a street called Vine Street. And then they continued on their journey, supposedly to her mother's house, driving across the river into northern Kentucky. Little described driving to a very hilly area, not far off the I-75, and then he drove up to a top of a little, what he called a round hill, where he ended up strangling her in the backseat of his car. And then he pulled her out of the car and put her body on top of that round hill, and he drove away and left her there. The next case is also unmatched to confession, This is North Little Rock, Arkansas. Little said that in 1994, he had first encountered a female sitting outside of a crack house in Little Rock, Arkansas. That she was sitting on the porch with her friends, and the majority of them were smoking crack out there, and he remembered it was cold, possibly even snowing when they met. He described her as a 20-year-old or a 24-year-old black woman, honey-colored skin, 5'7" tall, between 170 and 200 pounds. He said that her name might have been Ruth, and that she had told him that her mother lived in North Little Rock. He said that she had buck teeth in the front with a gap between the front two. He said, I really loved her. I really loved her. And I don't know that he meant love the way we do. I'm going to guess probably not, since the outcome of this case. But he stayed with her on and off for about 3 days. And during those 3 days together, he said that they would go shoplifting together. And then she would go and sell the stuff that they stole. He says he was arrested for shoplifting at a North Little Rock Kroger grocery store. This, in fact, has been proven by police records that show that he was arrested by the police for shoplifting on April 20th, 1994. According to Little, he was released 3 hours later because the Kroger store manager dropped all charges. He said he did this because he was tired of seeing that woman that Little was with staying in and around Little's car, so he dropped the charges so that Little could come and move his car off of the grocery store's property. He said when he returned to the car, the woman that he had been shoplifting with was there and sleeping inside of his car. That she woke up upon his arrival, and she asked that Little drive her to meet up with her ex-boyfriend. I'm not quite sure the reason behind that, but this is a man that she called Bear. Little believed at the time of his interview that Bear had since died, and he didn't specify how or why he believed that. But he then drove her back to her residence, and then he dropped her off and left. And then he returned to her place the next day. He picked her up, and he drove her either in the direction of Benton or Bentonville, Arkansas, because he called it both, so I'm not quite sure which. When they got just outside of Little Rock, Samuel Little drove down this little dirt road he saw. There were cornfields on either side of the road. Toward the end, he saw a pile of dead corn stalks on one side and a pile of corn stalks, and people dumped their trash and stuff. There was a trash mound on the other side. He said he manually strangled her to death in the car, and then he dragged her and left her on the pile of debris, the trash pile, stating he couldn't carry her over there because she was too heavy, but he left her there on the trash. The next case is an Unmatched Confession, 1972, Miami, Florida. Little says she went by Mary or Marianne. One name or two, Mary or Marianne. She was dressed as a woman, but was actually a man, 5'6" to 5'7", about 130 to 140 pounds. That she was from Miami, Florida, Liberty City to be more exact. She spoke about her boyfriend, who she called Wes. He met her at a bar on 17th Avenue in Miami. He remembered that she was wearing a cream and red colored miniskirt, that she had asked Little to drive her to the store after they had talked for a little bit, and then back to her apartment. And he took her to the store, but then instead of bringing her to her apartment, he drove onto the highway going towards Fort Lauderdale. He said it went through Alligator Alley until they were just outside of the Miami city limits. He said he was driving his stepfather's car, which was a Pontiac Le Mans. And he saw a small road that led off the main highway, and he took it. There was nothing but vegetation on the left side of the road where he had parked. He pulled her out of the car and began dragging her down this very little path that led into a lot of vegetation, and the ground under their feet started getting soggy, like a marsh. He said that she was struggling and fighting him, so he let her go. But then she fell face first into the swampy earth, and that's when he pounced. He killed Marianne, or Mary, and left her body there. She may never have been found as well. I'm going to start listing the rest of these that don't have as much detail. So the next case is an Unmatched Confession, Houston, Texas, murdered either between 1976 and 1979 or in 1993. And now you see why I say his memory for dates was lacking. This is a black female between 25 and 28 years old. The next case is also Unmatched to Confession, black female, age 25, killed in Knoxville, Tennessee in 1975. The next case, confession has been matched to a Jane Doe, but we need to give her name back. And we don't know what her name is, so we need to identify this Jane Doe. Her body was found in Willoughby Hills, Ohio. The victim was possibly from Cleveland, Ohio. She was a black female, ages between 25 and 35, and she was killed around 1982. This next one has a drawing, and this is Unmatched to a Confession, black female, age 28, killed in Charleston, South Carolina between 1977 and 1982. The next case, Unmatched to a Confession, black female, age unknown, killed in Cincinnati, Ohio in about 1974. The next one, this confession was matched to another Jane Doe who needs her name back. This is a black female between 35 and 45 years old. She was killed in 1977. The victim met Mr. Little in Gulfport, Mississippi. She was possibly from Pascagoula, Mississippi, and she may have worked at the Ingalls shipyard. That's some good information. Somebody's got to know something. Next case is not matched to a confession. This is a black female, age 22. She was killed between 1980 and 1984 in Gulfport, Mississippi. Next case, confession matched to a Jane Doe who needs her name back. Okay, this is a white female between the ages of 20 and 25 years old. She was killed in 1972 in Prince George's County, Maryland, but she may have been from Massachusetts. He may have picked her up in Massachusetts. The next case is an Unmatched to Confession, black female, age 24, killed in Monroe, Louisiana between 1987 and the early 1990s. The next one is Unmatched to a Confession, also killed in New Orleans, Louisiana in 1982, a white female between the ages of 33 and 44 years old. The next case, it's a double homicide. He killed both of these women at the same time, picked them up at the same time. There's one picture available, but there were two women, okay? The first one that has no photo, black female and age unknown. The second one was black female. He thinks that she was called Joe. He believes she was 26. They both met their killer and were picked up by him in Missouri. Then they were killed and dumped in Illinois, possibly Granite City, between 1976 and 1979. Next case is the confession was matched to a Jane Doe who needs her name back. She's a black female between the ages of 30 and 40 years old, killed in Macon, Georgia in 1977. The next one has no photo. The confession, though, is matched to a Jane Doe who needs her name back. Black female between 25 and 30 years old. She met Little in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and was killed in 1980 or 81 in Dade County, Georgia. The next one with no photo is Unmatched to a Confession. Black female between 23 and 25 years old. She was possibly a college student, and she was killed in 1984 in Atlanta, Georgia. This next one is Unmatched to a Confession. Black female between the ages of 35 and 40 years old, killed in 1981 in Atlanta, Georgia. The next one, Unmatched to a Confession. Black female between 22 and 23 years old, killed in 1974 in Savannah, Georgia. This next one is Unmatched to a Confession. Black female, age 23, killed in 1984 in Savannah, Georgia. The next one is Unmatched to a Confession. Black female. She met Samuel Little in Clearwater, Florida, was killed in 1977 or 78 in Plant City, Florida. The next one, Unmatched to a Confession. Black female, age unknown, killed in 84 in Tampa Bay, Florida. This next one is Unmatched to a Confession. Black female, age unknown, killed in 1984 in Fort Myers, Florida. This next one has a drawing. The confession was matched to a Jane Doe that needs her name back. White or possibly Cuban female between ages of 25 and 35. Her name was either Sarah or Donna. He can't remember or couldn't remember. She was killed in 1971 in Kendall, Florida. The next one has no picture and is unmatched by confession. Black female between 23 and 24 years old. Her name may have been Emily, and it's possible that she worked at the University of Miami. She was killed in the mid-70s in Miami, Florida. The next one here is unmatched to confession. Black female, 28 years old. Possibly worked on the Homestead Air Force Base. She was killed in 1971 or 1972 in Miami, Florida. This next one, unmatched to a confession. Black female, age 22. She may have been called Linda. Killed in 1971 in Miami, Florida. The next one, unmatched to a confession. White female, age unknown. Killed in 1970 or 71 in Homestead, Florida. The next one with no picture here is black female, unmatched to confession, 25 years old, killed in 1996 in Los Angeles, California. The next one, unmatched to confession, white female, between the ages of 23 and 25, killed in 1996 in Los Angeles, California. The next one, unmatched to confession, black female, 23 or 24, may have been called T Money, killed in 1996, Los Angeles, California. The next one, unmatched to confession, black female, 23 to 25 years old. She may have been called Sheila, killed in 1996 in Los Angeles, California. The next one here, unmatched confession, Hispanic female, either 24 or 25 years old. She may have been from Phoenix, Arizona, but she was killed in 92 or 93 in Los Angeles, California. This next one is unmatched to a confession, black female, age unknown, killed in 92 or 93, Los Angeles, California. This next one, unmatched to a confession, black female, age unknown, killed in 1992 in Los Angeles, California. This next one, no picture, unmatched to confession, black female, between 20 and 22 years old. She was possibly from San Francisco, but she was killed in 91 or 92 in Los Angeles, California. This next one is also unmatched to a confession, black female, between 40 and 45 years old. She may have been called Alice, killed in 1990 or 91 in Los Angeles, California. This next one has a picture, but is unmatched to confession. Black female, either 26 or 27 years old, killed in 1987 in Los Angeles, California. This next one is unmatched to a confession. Black female, age 22 or 23 years old, killed in 1987 in Los Angeles, California. This next one, unmatched to a confession. Black female, 50 years old. She may have had the nickname Granny. She was killed in 1987 in Los Angeles, California. This next one is unmatched to a confession. Black female, age 19, killed in 1987 in Los Angeles, California. This next one is also unmatched to a confession. Black female, killed in 1987 in Los Angeles, California. No other details are available for this one. Next is unmatched to a confession. Black female between the ages of 18 and 23 years old. She was killed in 1984 in San Bernardino, California. The next one here is unmatched to a confession, possibly from and or killed in the Phoenix area. She is believed to be in her 40s, and she was killed in either 88 or in 96. The next one is matched to a confession, matched to a Jane Doe. This is black female, 28 to 29 years old. She was picked up in Memphis, Tennessee, but killed in 1984 in Arkansas. And that concludes the list that the FBI has for the unmatched confessions. Now, try and keep in mind the dates might be wrong. The drawings are, like I said, they look like a fifth grader did it. So, but it does bear some resemblance. It gives you a kind of good idea. His descriptions of how he killed, he didn't go into much detail on that either, and that really has nothing to do with identifying them, other than if it was a Jane Doe, then they would have the cause of death and just not have their name. Also remember, when I say that they are called Linda or Granny, obviously this is not their real name. These are mostly sex workers, strippers, drug addicts. They're not going to give their real names. Majority of sex workers have nicknames that they're calling themselves. Strippers don't go by their real names when they get up on stage. They have a stage name that they use when they tell clients or just randoms whatever their name is. So when I say that their name could be Sheila or Mary, it very well might not be. It very well may be their stage name, their street name. Obviously, Granny, T-Money, these are not real names. These are street names. So keep that in mind as well. But there may be somebody who knew who this was, who knew somebody that came up missing or was found dead, and it was considered a drug overdose or natural causes, which made no sense to somebody at the time, and the artist's rendition is similar, has some of the same features. Don't go just by the name. Go by all of the events combined. If you have any information, I have the link to the FBI tip line in the description box. Again, if you know something, please say something. These women deserve their identities back. Their families deserve closure. And I am sorry that this was so long and drawn out. I did my best to make it semi-interesting, but honestly, this isn't for entertainment purposes as much as it is to try and help these families get their closure. If I pronounced any of the city names wrong, I apologize. I don't get out much, and my truck driver boyfriend is on the road at the moment, so he's not here to help me with some of these pronunciations. I do hope that you all stay safe out there and will join me next time. I'm working on another Did You Know, so I hope that you'll come and join me for that one. It should be very interesting. If you like this video, please hit like. If you have anything to say about it, please comment in the comment section down below. And if you have any cases that you would like me to look into, please comment that down below as well. Thanks for joining me today. Y'all stay safe.